This film is likely to become the highest rated movie of 2024. Douban's rating has already skyrocketed to 9.1. It outperforms 98% of biographical films. 50,000 people participated in the ratings. 30,000 people gave it a 5-star review. But this film has almost no negative reviews. It has overwhelming word of mouth, yet the promotion is almost zero. The screening rate is only 0.1%. Many viewers can say they don't know. It has been in theaters. Today, let's take a look at this film that many people have missed. The must-see theatrical movie. The film is based on true events. Located between England and France, the English Channel is called the Everest of the Sea. Due to its long distance and low water temperature, the weather is unpredictable. The currents are complex and changeable. Therefore, crossing the English Channel has become one of humanity's most difficult challenges against nature. The protagonist of this film, Judy, over 100 years ago, at just over 20 years old, successfully crossed the English Channel in 14 hours and 39 minutes. She became the first woman in history to achieve this feat. Moreover, she beat the previous male record by a full 2 months and 2 hours. This record was held for 24 years. It was not broken until 1950. Our story begins in 1914. A ship in New York, USA, caught fire on the Hudson River. Although the ship was only a few meters from the shore, it caused over 1,000 casualties. And the dead were all women and children. In that era, the United States was still very conservative. The nascent women's rights movement had not yet gained momentum. Women were not allowed to participate in sports. Swimming was solely for men. Women couldn't even expose their thighs at the beach without fear of being arrested. Those women watched the shore so close, but dared not jump ship to escape. The scene deeply shocked Judy's mother. Although she did not understand women's rights, she was determined to teach her two daughters how to swim in the future. At this time, Judy's life was hanging by a thread. She was suffering from a disease. In the medical conditions of the time, this disease could only be endured. After the doctor's examination, Judy was almost given a death sentence. The whole family fell into despair, but soon after, Judy surprisingly came downstairs, complaining of hunger. The family was overjoyed. Judy, with her strong will to live, overcame the illness. Perhaps this also foreshadowed her extraordinary life. After hearing her mother talk about the ship incident, Judy was determined to learn to swim, but her father absolutely disagreed. Because in the social context of that time, it was considered immoral for girls to learn to swim. Judy was determined to learn to swim, but her father absolutely disagreed. Because in the social context of that time, it was considered immoral for girls to learn to swim. But Judy did not give up. She began to use her magic to attack. At first, her father thought it was quite nice, but Judy kept singing, day and night, no matter the occasion, repeating the same song, until her father finally relented. Before swimming, her father dressed her in a thick sailor suit, with only her arms exposed. Then he tied a rope around her. This was Judy's first time in the water, but she wasn't scared at all. She dove into the water, as if she were born to swim. From then on, whenever she had time, she swam at the dock with her sister. They swam exceptionally well, able to swim around the dock several times. Many men couldn't compete with them, with their mothers and both daughters' swimming talents so high. They wanted to join the swim team for professional training, but at that time, swimming was exclusively a male sport. After inquiring around, the mother finally found a women's swim team hidden behind the boiler room. The mother wanted to speak to the owner, but the female coach asked sarcastically, "Here, there are no men in charge. I am the coach here, AB." The mother explained her purpose, and the coach let them swim a lap. As a result, the coach thought Judy's sister Meg had great swimming talent and could stay, but Judy wanted to compete too. The mother insisted that Judy join the swim team as well. The coach set a condition: Judy must first stoke the boiler before using the pool. The fee was $2 a week. The mother readily agreed. But when the father heard about the fee, he was immediately unhappy. The mother sat at the sewing machine, making flowers to earn money for her daughter's tuition. Thus, Judy and her sister successfully joined the swim team. Sister Meg could swim all day, but Judy had to stoke the boiler first. Because she was always so clumsy, she was often teased by other team members. During these times, her sister would come to support her, until Judy protested. The coach finally changed the rules. Every day during meals, the last place in the competition would stoke the boiler. Thus, Judy finally entered the pool of her dreams. After some time, Judy faced her first competition. The US women's swimming team competed against the Australian team. Before the match began, the host emphasized they provided lifeguards and doctors for this competition. That they had lifeguards and doctors for this competition. The starting gun fired. The starting gun fired. Judy slipped as she entered the water. She started half a beat behind everyone else. She swam with all her might, but was still in last place. Everyone had to focus on her sister Meg for the championship. But halfway through, Meg's energy began to wane. She gradually fell behind. At that moment, Judy started to push harder. She swam faster and gradually caught up with the Australian competitor. Everyone was shocked. The host didn't even know her name. Everyone stood up and applauded for her. In the final sprint, Judy surged ahead to take first place. Judy amazed everyone with her stunning performance. But her sister didn't feel jealous. Instead, she excitedly hugged her. She truly felt happy for her. In the period that followed, Judy participated in various competitions. She swam until her legs were sore. She broke several world records. She became a hot figure in New York. But no matter how many trophies she won, her father always felt that swimming was just a game. As a woman, she should ultimately marry and have children. So he arranged a blind date for Judy with a man. He was clearly much older than Judy. Like their family, he was a German immigrant. However, they arrived later. They couldn't even speak English. They struggled with English. Her mother didn't want her daughter to marry such a man. So she hinted to her daughter to give this guy a tough time, to scare him off. So during a walk, the sisters put on a good show. They pretended to fall into the sea. The man was terrified, but he couldn't call for help in English. He could only repeat the same word in a panic. Nuts. 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 Seeing him so flustered, the sisters almost laughed themselves silly. Their father was very angry. He thought his daughter had gotten hives as a child, suffered hearing loss, and had not been educated. He believed marrying was her best choice. Unexpectedly, a few days later, the U.S. Olympic Committee personally visited. They invited Judy to participate in the Paris Olympics, but they didn't invite her sister Meg. The reason was limited slots. Meg knew she hadn't been selected. That night, she prepared to meet her secret boyfriend. Judy stopped her. She wanted to go to Paris with her. But before they departed, Judy learned that the coach of the women's swim team was actually a man. Moreover, the coach had established many rules in the name of their safety. There were even guidelines on how to deal with harassment from French men. The coach also told them that women must learn breaststroke. He had attempted to swim the English Channel using breaststroke 21 times. But ironically, he had failed every time. After boarding the ship, the coach arranged their dormitory next to the cruise machinery. It was very noisy there. Everyone couldn't sleep well at all. To avoid contact with male athletes, the coach ordered them to stay in the dormitory. They couldn't come out to train. However, those male swimmers could practice freely. This made Judy and the others very angry, but they felt helpless. By the time the competition started, Judy and the others had not trained for 3 weeks. Naturally, they were out of shape. Judy tried her best, and only won a bronze medal in her individual event. At the moment the competition ended, she felt her Olympic career was over. Sure enough, due to poor performance, Ori decided to disband the women's swim team. After going in circles, Judy's life returned to square one. After all, she was just the daughter of a German meat seller. The low sky above women seemed unbreakable. It was hard to overcome. What upset her even more was that her sister gave up her boyfriend. She accepted the marriage arranged by their father, preparing to marry the son of a German butcher. Judy couldn't understand. Judy knew her sister was right. Their father had already put her trophies in a box. The former glory meant nothing. Her fate was no different from others. Judy thought, if she had won, maybe it would be different. But her sister said, do you think those people care about your wins or losses? As the daughter of a meat seller, we can never win. Those people, they don't want us to become heroes. They just want us to achieve nothing. Her sister was stunned. She didn't want us to become heroes. She was Judy's hero, but had to accept her dismal fate. But Judy didn't expect that she was also the hero for other girls. Just when she was feeling dejected, a group of little girls came up to her looking adoring. The reason they could learn to swim was because of Judy, so they were very grateful to her. Judy was their hero, their idol. At that moment, Judy suddenly understood the meaning of her efforts. It wasn't just for herself. More importantly, she would become a light, leading more women to a bright destination. Their hero happened to be the legendary figure who successfully swam across the English Channel, Bill. But by then, Bill had become a peculiar drunkard. She came ashore naked and was immediately taken away by the Coast Guard. Judy saw something in her absurd behavior that wasn't understood by the world. Perhaps she could also cross the English Channel and break through the low sky above women, especially when she saw from the news that so far, only 5 men had successfully crossed the English Channel. It seemed this matter was related to her. And she also knew that if she didn't do this, she would inevitably end up like her sister, marrying someone and living a life of domesticity. She didn't want to live that unremarkable life. On the day of her sister's wedding, Judy declared her decision. She would swim across the English Channel. Her sister was not surprised at all. That night, she announced this news to her family. Everyone exchanged glances. Their father was in disbelief. But to swim across the English Channel, she must first secure sponsorship. She approached her coach, who also strongly supported her idea, and immediately took her to meet the Australian committee leader, Suleiman. However, this Suleiman had been dedicated to opposing women participating in the Olympics. How could he possibly agree to sponsor her? To dissuade her, he described the difficulty of crossing the English Channel. The English Channel is 21 miles wide, and the currents change every few hours. To cope with those currents, she would need to swim at least 50 miles. The water is very cold, and there are unpredictable storms. Waves can reach 20 feet high. There are also dangerous jellyfish and terrifying sharks in the water. In the end, he concluded, "I'm sure you will die out there." To prove her strength, Judy made a bet with him. If she could swim from New York to New Jersey in 3 hours, Suleiman would support her challenge. Judy set off at sunset, and Suleiman sent people to follow her. 2 hours and 56 minutes later, Suleiman saw Judy coming from New York in his car. Her face was filled with disbelief. At that moment, this girl was no longer Judy. She was a miracle. Upon learning she was going to cross the English Channel that night, her mother suddenly called Judy. She was very worried because her sister had drowned. Her mother didn't want her daughter to take that risk. Judy told her that she couldn't stay here and couldn't accept the family's arrangements to marry and have children like her sister and other girls. That kind of life was not what she wanted. Her mother had no words left to say. The seeds of ambition had been sown in her daughter's heart by her own hand, so she could only unconditionally support her daughter's decision. The next day, Judy met the coach Suleiman arranged for her, Wolf. This man was the main reason for her Olympic failure last time. Judy couldn't accept it, but Suleiman told her this was a necessary condition, otherwise, we won't sponsor you. With no choice, Judy had to follow Wolf to France. This was the starting point for crossing the English Channel. Next to a tavern, there were many male challengers. Judy was the only female challenger. A man named Benji felt humiliated. Judy remained calm and composed. She raised her glass. He was a great swimmer. He was a great swimmer. He was a great swimmer. Benji was impressed by Judy and respectfully acknowledged her. He had challenged it 12 times. Once, he was just a few meters away from England when suddenly a strong Atlantic current hit him from the side, sweeping him onto the shoals. Fortunately, someone was following him. Otherwise, he would have died. Benji told her, this was a lonely challenge. No one wants you to succeed. They are all waiting to see you fail. After training began, Coach Wolf made things difficult for Judy. He didn't want her to succeed. He wouldn't let Judy eat meat and bread, only giving her fruit, trying to make her train on an empty stomach. But Judy was never one to give up easily. She secretly ate the food passed to her by her companions, not caring how it looked. A few days later, Benji challenged again, but once again, ended in failure. He was completely frozen, his face, blue and purple, barely alive. "It's not my time," he said, "the hand of God. Will you pray for me today? Will you pray for me? Will you pray for me?" Judy witnessed the terrifying challenge for the first time, but she felt not an ounce of fear. Instead, she felt eager to try. On July 20, 1926, Judy officially began her challenge. There was a huge crowd on the shore, all eyes on her. But Judy remained expressionless, constantly applying grease to her body. This was to maintain her body temperature and protect her skin from the seawater. The staff beside her announced the rules. During the challenge, the brave ones cannot touch anyone. Otherwise, they will immediately lose the opportunity. Amid the crowd, Judy calmly said, "A boat follows me not far away." Behind were several small boats, all media reporters. Coach Wolf kept issuing orders, but they were all useless chatter. Seeing Judy full of energy, her speed undiminished, Wolf began to panic. No matter what, he could not let Judy succeed. If she succeeded, this 21-time failed challenger would completely lose face, so he continued to offer Judy an apple, preparing to touch her hand to make her challenge fail midway, but he miscalculated. The apple fell into the sea. Seeing Judy had swum a third of the way, her speed still unyielding, Wolf became increasingly anxious. He grabbed a bottle of drink, put a few drops of seasickness medicine in it, then used a net to pass it to Judy. Judy unsuspectingly drank it, quickly feeling dizzy. Her chest felt tight. Seeing this, Wolf immediately declared the challenge a failure, ordering them to pull Judy up. Soon, this news spread around the world. The host concluded. Predictably, the English Channel is too difficult for women. The challenge ended here. We can assert that if even Judy can't complete it, then no woman in the world can complete the challenge. Hearing these words, countless women waiting by their radios, hoping for good news about Judy. Countless women waiting by their radios could only silently turn off the lights. For good news about Judy, could only silently turn off the lights. Returning to darkness. After hearing the news, her father and sister immediately rushed to France to see Judy and prepared to take her home. Judy was very surprised, but also confused. She didn't understand why she suddenly felt dizzy. Just then, the man who successfully swam across the English Channel, Bill, came over. He said he also felt something was off. Judy's speed was very fast, and her stamina showed no significant decline. She should have been able to keep going for a long time. Why did she suddenly become exhausted? Judy recalled carefully, and finally remembered. It was after she drank that bottle of drink that her stomach began to hurt. Then came the headache, and she felt faint. Bill immediately concluded, "You were drugged." But now, no one would believe Judy's words. The only way was to challenge again, but it had to be kept from Wolf. So, Judy secretly jumped out of the returning ship's window and quietly returned to the waters. Bill was an expert at swimming across the English Channel. He had researched and recorded the currents, weather, and water temperature in this area. He also made detailed plans and routes for Judy, and was willing to be her navigator. Judy set one condition. "You must promise me that under no circumstances will anyone pull me out of the water, not even my father or sister. They will never understand me. Only you understand me." Bill knew this left him no way out. He was forcing himself to have the courage of burning the boats, to complete the challenge. Such spirit deeply impressed him. In the past, he was the same way. After successfully crossing the English Channel, he was taken to see the Queen of England, to receive the highest honor, but he couldn't find peace. As a hero in others' eyes. He swam the English Channel, simply because he wanted to. These words struck Judy deeply. The reason he had come this far was not to become a hero, but because he wanted to do this. On August 6, 1926, Judy set out again. He ignored the reporters chasing after him, and quickly ran toward the sea, beginning his challenge. But those annoying reporters still followed him by boat. They swarmed around Judy like FLIs, which infuriated Bill. He fired a warning shot. At this moment, Judy's mother from Shenzhen arrived at the New York radio station, wanting to get updates on Judy as soon as possible. Shortly after he swam out, a patch of red tide suddenly appeared ahead. That was the red jellyfish, feared by all challengers. Judy had to avoid it. He could only force his way through. The tentacles of these jellyfish were venomous. If stung, it would hurt more than a whip. Judy charged forward, heading toward the red tide. With his own body, he met the challenge head-on. With each stroke, he felt immense stinging pain. Judy screamed, but showed no signs of slowing down. By the time he swam out of that patch of red tide, his body was covered in wounds. The seawater constantly eroded his injuries, the pain piercing to the bone. After passing through the jellyfish, Judy was too exhausted and could only float on the surface to rest. His father thought he was spent. But a few minutes later, Judy regained his strength and set off again. At this point, he had been in the water for 8 hours. Only half the distance remained to the finish. But soon, Judy faced strong currents again. He had to swim against the tide. After an hour of swimming, there was no progress. Seeing him struggle, his sister jumped into the sea, like a dolphin, leading the way for him. Though it was a brief companionship, Judy felt greatly encouraged. After swimming for a while, his sister was exhausted, trembling all over. She couldn't imagine how Judy could endure for so long. What kind of strong will was this? After a meal, Judy regained some energy and warmth. He continued onward, with only 6 miles left to the destination. Everyone saw the dawn of victory, but unfortunately, they were carried by the current to a dangerous shoal. The ship couldn't pass, so Judy had to cross this perilous shoal alone. Worse yet, the sky was darkening, the water temperature kept dropping, and Judy's strength was almost gone. Without the guidance of the lead boat, Judy could easily get lost on the featureless sea. His father didn't want him to take the risk, but Judy was determined. Bill stood firmly by his side. After telling his father, "I love you," Judy set off silently. At this moment, he had been in the cold water for nearly 13 hours. Then the unimaginable happened. Judy got lost at sea. The currents were fierce. The night was dark, and the water was icy. Judy was engulfed by a profound fear. In the vast ocean, he was all alone, unable to see the coastline or find any direction, only endless loneliness. cold, and fear. He felt himself breaking down, but nothing was enough. He continued to battle the sea, waiting for a glimmer of hope. Suddenly, Chudy saw lights flickering in the distance. He was almost in tears of joy. With light, there was a direction to move toward. He gathered his spirits and swam toward the light. As he neared the shore, Chudy could finally see that these lights were the British people shining their lights to guide him. The bonfires were lit, and people cheered, gathering to welcome the hero's return. Without a doubt, Chudy made history. This news spread rapidly around the world. The whole of America was in an uproar. Chudy swam a total of 35 miles, taking 14 hours and 39 minutes. Not only was she the first woman to accomplish this feat, but she also surpassed the previous male record by a full 2 hours. This achievement, without a doubt, created waves around the world. When Chudy returned to America, 2 million New Yorkers took to the streets, welcoming this true hero along Broadway. Chudy shared the supreme honor with her coach. Chudy's greatness was not just in completing this historic achievement, but more importantly, she broke the low sky over women with her tenacious will and indomitable fighting spirit, inspiring countless women to walk the path of breaking discrimination and prejudice, ushering in a new era for the feminist movement worldwide. When I faced the raging waves in the dark, I was terrified. I felt helpless. I was lost, but my willpower told me I was always alone. That is the truth. What I needed was not weakness, not pity, and certainly not complaints. The only strength I needed, the only thing I needed was to persevere, and persevere. Any cry for help was unnecessary. The only thing that could save me, that could empower me, that could bring me glory, was only myself.